Ms. Rahayu Mahzam.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to declare at the outset that I sit on the Public Transport Council. However, my views expressed today are my own, based on interaction with some residents and the feedback I received. This bill is intended to regulate the provision of point-to-point passenger transport services in Singapore. The point-to-point passenger transport services, including the street hail and ride hail services, form an important part of the transport services in Singapore. I'm not sure about other families, but I recall that when I was younger, taking a taxi was a luxury, and you would only do so when you really needed to get somewhere fast or had a lot of things to carry. Private hire vehicles were not always accessible to the masses. Now it is more commonplace to see people using point-to-point transport services, especially with the entry and proliferation of the private hire vehicles in the sector. It therefore becomes imperative to have proper rules regulating the sector. I would like to take this opportunity to convey some of the views that I have received from some drivers, especially from private hire vehicles. There is some anxiety from amongst the drivers about what this new bill and further regulations would bring. I believe in this respect there may be concerns with regards to what sections 30 and 31 of this draft bill would mean to the drivers. Some of my residents are private hire drivers and have shared some challenges they face dealing with competition with customers. In a conversation with one resident, he shared his concerns about the impact of further rules, especially on penalties that may affect the income he eventually brings home. I've also received feedback calling for parity and fairness to the drivers in making rules regulating this sector. In this regard, there are some specific anecdotes I would like to share. I'm told that currently private hire drivers enter additional fares, such as ERP, manually into the eventual charge to the passenger. Someone shared that some drivers include extra additional fares to the actual fare without knowing. This is especially the case when the passenger without the passenger knowing. This is especially the case when the passenger made the driver wait quite long and the driver arbitrarily charges the passenger for waiting time. This does not seem right, but some drivers feel that the waiting penalty is fair because they say that very often passengers will book way in advance and have the drivers wait for them at the passenger's convenience. Sometimes the wait can be up to 15 minutes. Besides lowering their potential income, they may also incur fines if they are waiting in a no parking area in the central business district. There was also a feedback on the fare start and stop for private hire drivers or the ride-hail services. For taxis, the fare starts when drivers hit the start button on the meter and stop when drivers stop the meter. However, the point at which the fare stops is not clear for private hire drivers. However, the point at which the fare starts is not clear for private hire drivers. An example given by a private hire driver is that the passenger made the driver drive up all the way up 7 stories in an industrial park building to reach the exact unit. Because of the large size of the building, it may take close to 10 minutes to reach the top of the building. This is even as the destination was supposed to be the arrival foyer of the building itself. Drivers also said that surge pricing is a good mechanism as it does encourage drivers to come out and drive when the supply of drivers on the road is low. This really does improve service levels. Drivers are notified of higher prices and are activated and motivated to drive. However, some drivers wish to get more clarity on how much of the fare actually goes to the drivers and how much just goes to the companies or operators. These are some examples, but the point is that drivers are asking for some fairness as authorities set rules to regulate conduct with passengers and the business operations. Other points relating to regulations include whether we want to regulate cancellation policies as well. I'm informed that some operators may not charge cancellation charges. Further, even though passengers are charged a certain penalty fee for cancelling on the drivers, what are the rules for drivers cancelling on passengers? Are we looking at specific rules to regulate these issues? On passenger safety, I would like to ask if there is a need to regulate and enforce a certain standard for reporting of emergency situations during rides. Currently, ride-hailing apps have emergency buttons. However, are there standard operating procedures that the companies have to adhere to upon receiving the report, and whether there is also a need to regulate such SOPs? In conclusion, I believe we can all agree that over the years there have been some improvements in the point-to-point passenger transport service sector, especially with the ride-hailing apps. The improvements have indeed raised convenience and service levels of such transport services in Singapore. We should encourage continued innovation on this front. I appreciate that we do need to strike the balance between regulation and allowing for some space for the sector to grow. And I believe it's important to continue to share and engage drivers and operators to improve the sector. Notwithstanding the inputs I gave above, I stand in support of this bill.